So it says we should be live.
Nice.
Let me see if we actually are. I'm trying to see, like, how would I even... Let me see if I go to my Twitter.
Yeah, it's hard to pull up things in the same window as we're recording in.
Oh, it says I am live. Oh, cool. I see
Is
myself.
it your Twitter?
Yeah. If you go to my Twitter,
Oh,
yeah,
sweet.
we are live. There's a little bit of a delay, which actually is good, I think. So let me quote tweet this.
It's pretty sweet. First time I've ever done this.
Yeah, technology, man, wild. Now on YouTube, I'm wondering how I can see if I'm live. Like if I go to my YouTube channel. What's cool too is like it'll show you how many people are. Oh yeah, we are live on YouTube. Let me see. Yeah, we're here. We're live. Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, well, what I was gonna say is it's cool too because it shows you like in the actual Riverside, like how many people you have watching each one of your streams, which is pretty cool. And then obviously the chat feature too, where you can just see all your chats from all your different live streams in one place. It's pretty dope. Riverside, man.
I joined as myself. I want to see if it.
Yeah.
Testing this out. Let's see.
I'm gonna post on my Instagram again just to.
Testing this out. Oh, that's the Riverside audience. So let me see what happens if I message from YouTube.
Yeah, try to see if you message on YouTube if it comes up. If anyone's actually watching, we are trying to figure out these the logistics of this live streaming.
Yes. There might be a delay. I don't know.
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah, nice. And it's cool too because it shows you like from what app like they message. So like YouTube, Riverside. Yeah, that's pretty dope, man. Damn.
That is cool.
The one thing that was weird is that like technical issue that I told you that I was trying to figure out today. So I had logged into my Riverside, and for some reason, it was telling me that I couldn't create any more studios in my account. Which I'm also kind of stupid because I create a new studio for each podcast episode that I record.
Okay.
But what you're, I guess, technically supposed to do is like you can create one studio, so it could just be called like podcast episodes. And then within that studio, you have like all your different projects, which would be like all your different episodes. But I was creating a new studio for each episode. So it was giving me like an error, like, oh, you're over the max limit of studios or something. And I was like, oh shit. So I had to go figure that out. But yeah, I know some people have issues with Riverside. I've honestly only ever had one issue in terms of like a recording. It was actually with Jason McIntyre. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's usually on the Herd.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it like didn't upload to Riverside or something, so it was kind of weird. But other than that, man, Riverside's great. All right, enough about Riverside. Let me post on my Instagram again. I'm gonna post another picture of my dog and be like, if you don't join, he's gonna be
what a
sad.
coincidence. We both have English Bulldogs.
Do you have an English Bulldog too?
My parents do. Yeah. So that's our actual mascot. Joker Mag. His name is Joker.
Yeah.
So he's our mascot. It's funny. What's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Medel, which means like baby bear in Serbian.
Wow. That's a great name.
Yeah. But I had to close my door because he just follows me around everywhere. And I love him to death, but he snores like, I mean, as you know, like they snore a ton. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going live. I can't have him snoring in the background. All right, let me post on my Instagram one more time. Stutter Chats is my friend Matt.
What's up?
Appreciate
Matt?
the comment, man.
Thanks for joining.
Matt's super dope. He's one of my best friends. He was born with a stutter, and he actually created a podcast for people who stutter. So like he brings on like different people in the field of stuttering, like speech pathologists or speech therapists, brings on other people who stutter and have made like great careers. Like he's had comedians, which like that's a career that I definitely would not expect someone to excel at, who has a stutter. So like really cool stories. So he's killing it too.
That's great. Yeah, I actually, when I had a podcast in like 2018, 2019, I interviewed someone who overcame a stutter and now he's a public speaker.
Wow.
LaRon Barton. I wonder if they've ever spoke. That's really cool.
Yeah. What was the name again? I'll drop in the
LaRon
chat.
Barton. Yeah. Let me say LaRon.
That might be a good guess for you,
LaRon
man.
L. Barton. Yeah, he was great. He was awesome to talk to, and I think we've kind of stayed in touch
Yeah.
here and there over the years. So, small world.
Yeah. Let me just post it. If I could type join or my dog will cry.
He might cry
Perfect.
anyway, right?
Yeah, that might just be a given. Let me see. Okay, cool. Well, Tyler, man, well, I mean, we talked about it. I'm super grateful that you're able to come on and do this. It's a little weird for me, to be honest, like this whole live thing, because I'm so used to it being a podcast and everything being, I mean, listen, like whether you want to, I mean, I'll certainly admit it, like it's a little more formal when you're doing a podcast and you're, you have a limited amount of time and you're trying to get certain questions across and, you don't want to mess up. You don't want to say, you don't want to do all those things. So it's weird. Like I want to start this off like a podcast because I'm so used to that.
Why not?
But yeah. But like we were talking about, like we've gotten pretty close here over the last, I can't remember when you came on the pod. I think it was like September, October of last year. Has it been a year? No.
I don't know, because my book came out in March and you had read it already by that point. So it might have been like April or May.
Yeah.
Feels like a long
You're
time
probably
ago.
right. Wow, my reference for time is completely off.
Me too.
But yeah, for those listening or watching, I guess, Tyler came on the pod and we had a great time. We kind of just stayed in touch ever since. I feel like we used to talk from time to time and text and just be like, hey, how's it going? And kind of check in on one another. And Tyler's, I mean, I'll let you kind of explain what you do and the Lord's work that you're putting out. But it's interesting, like how, people always ask me actually, like, I've gotten this question a lot is like, do you keep in touch with the people that you have on your podcast? And I'm like, honestly, it's really kind of hit or miss. Like it really depends on the person. And I mean, I'm not going into it with the expectation like, oh, everyone's going to become your best friend just because you have them on your podcast. But like I have always said, my expectations with the podcast is like, I just want to meet really cool people and talk about like topics that I'm interested in and that the audience is interested in. And if that's all it ever is, like that's a success for me. Like I have a lot of fun doing that. And so like I always bring up you as an example of like a friend that I've gained through this whole podcast thing that, I might have otherwise never had the opportunity to meet. So, yeah, really cool. I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Tyler, like, what do you do? So, like, what work are you in? If people are unfamiliar with who you are, like, give us a little spiel on your background.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me on and for the kind words. Yeah, I'm glad that we connected, and it was probably the best podcast I've done, like in terms of like the conversation and how much we flowed, and we had a lot in common in terms of like how we feel about sports media, which kind of leads me into what I do. So this whole thing is kind of like a side project for me, but it started back in 2017 in the fall after I graduated college. I had been playing baseball my whole life. Back in middle school, I got cut from the team. I was always small. I was always, fighting to make the team. And like at the time, it was kind of where do I find inspiration or proof that like I can accomplish what I want to accomplish in baseball? And that was found through some of the stories that were going around at the time. It was a lot harder to find back then. Tim Lincecum, Dustin Pedroia, undersized baseball players that I kind of looked up to, David Eckstein, like guys like that. And, at the time I would go up to my parents' computer room upstairs back in the old desktop days, and I would search for these stories and try to find like little nuggets of information that would say like, oh, this guy was only 4'10" in middle school or whatever. And it would kind of give me hope and give me like a measuring stick to compare against. And so, fought my way to making the team the next year, and then just kind of worked my way up slowly, like from being like a bench player, a backup guy, to being a starter. Ended up playing Division III baseball at McDaniel College. Um, Played semi-pro baseball in the Delco League around me here. Ended up winning like MVP of that league. So like, nothing crazy, but like just my own story of like overcoming something kind of fueled me to start something of my own, to kind of pass down what I learned of, finding inspiration in these stories. So now I write for my website. It's called jokermag.com. It's the home of the Underdog. I'm trying to collect as many inspiring sports stories as possible to try to pass down those lessons to the next generation.
Yeah, and I have so another first for our live stream here. I'm going to share my screen, which is a phrase that I've definitely used in corporate America, but definitely not in a live stream. So here we go. But yeah, so I pulled up your website, and it's we talked about this on the podcast, and you alluded to it, and we've shared a couple laughs about it. Just the state of sports media. Maybe that's a good topic for us to get into right now
Mhm.
as well, is like just where sports media is at, kind of. And I see Gabriel's comment. That's another friend. But just like where sports media is at and kind of where it's heading. And I think there's a couple different factors at play here. One, like I think the overall impact of gambling, and how gambling has affected how fans not only watch sports but how they interact with players. Just the whole economy of it. How seemingly every sports podcast nowadays is sponsored by DraftKings or
Yeah.
FanDuel or pick your favorite gambling site. And I'm not throwing shade at any of these companies. At the end of the day, like it's a growing market. They have a ton of money to throw to sponsor and to market their own product. So I get it. It's a business. Um, but I do think that there are some negative ramifications of all that. And I think we've seen that start to play out. I want to get your thoughts on it, but I had, and I think I told you about this. I had Todd Durkin on the podcast, who is, he's a trainer for like NFL athletes, and like he's trained Jordan Love, Drew Brees, like he's like best friends with Drew Brees. And he came on the podcast and he was talking about, we were just talking about like players and the player perception. And, he was saying how, for example, I think it was Jordan Love and a couple other players went out to a military base and they spent the whole day there, interacting with the troops and signing gear and taking pictures. But like no news outlet, picked up that story. Like nobody reported that.
Mhm.
But then like the news that you do see is like, oh, so and so player did something terrible, which I'm not saying don't report it, but there is some balance to where
Mhm.
like if you're only reporting all the negative stuff, like now the public's perception of athletes is like they're these terrible people who do terrible things. And I feel like it's difficult to find some of the more positive news and some of the good that they do for the community. I'll end it on this note. Like Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example. Um, Say what you will about Aaron Rodgers, like disagree with his politics. I'm not going to get into any of that. The guy has done a lot of good for a lot of communities, and there's a really good book, Out of the Darkness by Ian O'Connor. Is a fantastic read. And Ian O'Connor is a longtime sports biographer. He's written multiple biographies of athletes, and he wrote one on Aaron Rodgers. And in the book, he talks about just like how much charity work he does and the communities that he supports. But like that type of stuff you would never hear about or never even see unless you read it in a book. So I don't know. I think there's a balance, and I think we're too far skewed to one side.
Yeah, I agree. And before we get into this, like my response to that, I'll say I just had two ideas now based on what you
Oh,
just said,
okay.
because I remember you bringing up the books. You've obviously read a ton of books. So one, putting together a list of like your favorite sports books or the best sports books and kind of giving that away to your audience or making it a lead
Yeah.
magnet for something. Um, and two, maybe interviewing some of the authors of these books, I think could be a really cool angle for your podcast since you've read all of them and digested them, and you kind of, you can get the behind the scenes look at some of these books, and maybe turn that into some affiliate revenue too to drive some book sales. But um besides the point there, agreed, like the good news doesn't spread nearly as quick as the bad news. So I always thought, if I share these stories long enough, like it's going to grow. And it hasn't been until, I started in fall of 2017. It hasn't been until maybe 2022, 2023 that I started getting any kind of traction. And in terms of like a readership that's loyal and returning and, sizable enough to, generate an actual business. So, I think if I
Real
were
quick,
to,
when did you start again? You said 2021.
no, November of 2017 is when I
November
started the
2017
website.
is when you started. And when did I want you to repeat this specifically for everyone just watching. Like and you said when did you start getting traction or gaining an
Yeah,
actual
like
audience?
2022, I would say. Like, I had friends and family that would read here and there. I had a podcast for a while that would maybe get 100 listeners with like a really good guest.
Mhm.
And, my newsletter was maybe 300 people. And now we're at, 26, close to 27,000 subscribers. Still far away from where I want it to be, but it's a grind to do anything in media. And I think back to your point of tabloid style news and preying on controversial topics and getting the emotional response out of your audience in a negative way is definitely kind of a shortcut to grow, unfortunately, in today's world. But we're trying to do something different and zig when other people are zagging. It's we don't have the cash behind us that some of these big companies do, but you know I'm betting that the stories themselves are going to create the value and bring the right people in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And the reason I wanted you to repeat kind of your trajectory is especially like I can speak for podcasting. So like if you look at the Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO, like Alex Cooper, Call Her Daddy, right? Pick any Theo Vaughn, pick any one of your favorite podcasters, which I didn't realize this, Gabriel. This is I think we talked about this if you're still watching. I think Theo Vaughn is like 45. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
45. I thought he was like 30, like I thought he was like 32, 30. Like I thought he was
Mhm.
a lot younger, but
He's been out
um
there for a while. He really hasn't gotten attention until recently.
right. So like again, another example of someone who just did it for long enough to get lucky essentially, right? Like
Mhm.
if you have enough swings at the bat, like eventually you're going to hit one home run. So I don't know, like I think it's a good reminder stuff takes time. And I think especially in the beginning, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is like you really need to separate yourself from the results, from the metrics, from the views, from the subscribers. Whatever your expectations are, like just throw them out. Like don't even because what's going to end up happening is your expectations are way up here, your results are way down here, and that delta between your expectations and the results is what's going to push you to quit. And expectations, high expectations, especially in the beginning, have killed way more dreams than talent or skill or anything else ever has. Because you're going into, I mean, same with this live stream, right? If before the live stream, we had said like, hey man, I can't wait for tonight. We're gonna have 1,000 people in here. It's gonna be crazy. Like
Mhm.
eh, if like in this current, like we have what, two viewers, I think, on YouTube. I don't know how many
I
on
can't even
Twitter.
see.
Like we would have quit. We would have said like, okay, like this is not worth it. And what's funny, like, and you had mentioned this, like when I called you earlier today to kind of go over the logistics for this. You're like, dude, Nick, even if we have two people on here, like,
Yeah.
I'm super excited to do it and to talk. So I don't know. I just think the expectation, like same thing with the podcast. Like if I went into it thinking, oh man, like within a month I'm gonna be Joe Rogan. I mean, we are both bald, so that that's uh, that may have been actually a fair expectation. But Like if I went into it thinking I was going to be Joe Rogan, like I would have just quit and been like, okay, like I'm not going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and Gabriel made a good point too. Andrew Schultz is another example of a guy,
Yeah.
he grinded away. He was on Guy Code. I think that was probably his big break back then. He was one of the people who
Mhm.
pioneered the whole YouTube like clipping thing. Like he would clip up his crowd work and stuff like that and put it all out there. And that kind of started
Yeah.
a movement for comedians to start putting all their content out for free on YouTube and getting an audience that way. Sebastian Maniscalco, like so many comedians grind it out because it's such a competitive space, just like podcasting, just like media in general. So yeah, there's great examples everywhere. And on that note, like I would love to expand outside of sports eventually in the future. Like when I started this site, it was entertainment, music, movies. I would have stories from everywhere. And I just kind of, it was hard to build an audience that way. So I wanted to focus and niche down and focus on what I know best, which is, sports and mainly, football and baseball is where my strong
Yeah.
suit is. Um, but yeah, back to your point, like I was just watching the Eagles game, which was a national broadcast. Tom Brady
Terrible
was
game, by the way.
announcing. Terrible game, but
The
Tom
Eagles are
Brady
so
was
boring,
announcing.
man. The Eagles
Yeah,
are so boring to watch. We'll get
they
we'll
are a
get to that
boring
later,
team. And
but
people are fed up with the tush push, and that's fine. I mean, this is the point though. Like Tom Brady was saying, like who cares about the stats? Like everyone like gets on Jalen Hurts, and like you can get on
yep.
Mahomes too. Like this, the stats, like we don't care about, like as a player, you don't care what the numbers are. You want to win, and like a quarterback wants to do everything they can to help the team win. And if that means throwing for less than 100 yards, so be it. Like you have to pick the metric that's best for you. That's like your North Star. And to me, it should be something you control. Like you
Mm,
mentioned, if we have one or two viewers, I don't care. Like we want to put out the best product we can, and we want to, do the best that we can every day and do it consistently enough over time to where the wins will come. Like you just have to do the
yeah.
right things and put in the work. Jalen Hurts is a guy that puts in the work and he tunes out the outside noise and he just goes at it. Mahomes is the same way, from what I understand. All the winners have that in common, and that's kind of, back to the underdog angle. Like that's what is the mentality? What is like the approach that makes these people great? That's what I'm so fascinated by. And that's something we could all apply in our own field and our own passions.
Dude, couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, obviously true on so many levels. And there is something to be said for just the guy who doesn't quit. Um, and I'm sure you've seen it a ton with some of the stories that you've covered. I mean, I think, I mean, you and I are both pretty early on in our, let's say, our media journeys or our entrepreneurship journey. But um, like, I look at you as someone as well, and someone that I admire for not quitting. Like you, like we mentioned earlier, like you had started the newsletter in November of 2017, and
Mhm.
it's now 2025, right? So I mean, you're coming up on your 8-year anniversary here in 2 months.
Mhm.
And you really didn't see anything for like the first 3 or 4 years. And so it's and like Chris Williamson has shared this chart too, like host of Modern Wisdom, great podcaster. But he has his like YouTube chart, or I think he shows actually his like podcast downloads or something, and it's just like basically 0 for 3 years or 4 years, and then it's like year 5 it takes off and it's this big thing. um
Mhm.
and he says how like every year that he does the podcast, like 80% of his viewers are new viewers that just discovered the podcast this year. And I'll say one other thing too, for like anyone who's thinking about doing content or honestly anything, like well, especially within content. um like you post out newsletter or put out newsletters, you put out videos, tweets, all of that. And so you can attest to this, where you spend so much time working on a piece of content and you post it and it flops. And there's basically two responses that you can have to that scenario. One is you can be extremely disappointed, um, and blame someone else, something else, whatever outside, thing that you want to go after. So you can externalize it or you can internalize it and be like, what can I have done better? Like, could I have, written a better hook? Could I have, made a better thumbnail? Could the intro have been better? And so I always try to take like the internal approach and be like, how can I become better? But then on top of that, like the thing that I love about content is how every piece of content that you put out is essentially a lottery ticket. and you
Mhm.
never know when that lottery ticket is gonna win. And all it like truly like all it takes is one podcast episode, one newsletter to find the right people, or to blow up, and now all of a sudden your life changes. And I I can't remember his name. What's his name? Mark Manson, the
Mhm.
guy who wrote The Subtle Art. Was it The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Yeah. So when that book first came out, it was a New York Times bestseller, and everyone was like, "Oh, Mark Manson, like overnight success, like this and that." Um, and sorry, I was just checking the streams. Um, they're like, "Oh, Mark Manson, overnight success. Like, how did you do it?" He's like, "Oh, what people don't realize was I was blogging for 15 years
Yep.
before I wrote the book, and like nobody read the blogs. Like
And he wrote other
not too
books.
many people wrote." Right, and he wrote other books. So he's like, "Yeah, everyone thinks I'm a overnight success, but like the fact of the matter is like I've been at this for like 15 years." So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't
There's
know,
no
something
overnight
about not giving
success.
up.
I think Arnold Schwarzenegger said something like that, like, "No man is self-made, and there's no such thing as overnight success." Something to that effect, and it's people don't see the work you put in, it's, like, cliche at this point, and it's just a matter of, like you said, not giving up and consistently going
Yeah.
after it every day, but also you know, learning from your mistakes and learning from things that didn't do as well as you had hoped, and applying that in the future and just making it, I try to say, like, 1% better every time.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I strive for, but controlling what you can control. It's the mentality of like being an athlete. It's the same thing. Like in baseball, especially, it's a game of failure. You need to control what you can and not get caught up in the results,
Yep.
and just be process driven and outcome independent, as they say.
Yeah. I want to get back to sports media, man. I know we touched on it a little bit, but from your perspective, like what's your take on the landscape and this current state of sports media?
From my perspective, it's frustrating as a fan and also just as a person who's creating content that I feel is, deserves more attention, and we all feel that way about our content, but um you know, you also have to understand the psychology of human beings. Like we're attracted to like bad news spreads faster. If you've ever read the book Contagious, like Why Things Spread, I think that's what it's called. Great
Mhm.
book. I recommend it to everybody, but it goes into the psychology behind like why you were to tell a friend about something, like what makes you want to spread the word. And it's like, oh, did you hear so and so did this bad thing, or so and so got arrested? Like that's much more likely to spread around like a family dinner table than oh, so and so got promoted at work today, or like good news. Like good news doesn't make its way around as fast as bad news unless it's like an extreme situation, or like you see people posting about getting engaged and getting married, like the big life milestones. But like outside of that, it's very hard to spread good news compared to bad news. And, the media is tapping into that because that's what makes money. And right now, in an ad supported business like media, eyeballs equal cash. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So they're going to do what they're incentivized to do, which is get eyeballs and get attention. And um, it might not be content that everyone wants. And that's where you have to find your niche.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it's actually funny. I was having this conversation with my mom the other night because we were watching we watched actually the news because of the Charlie Kirk, what happened last week.
Hmm.
Um, and she was like, like I turn on the news and it's just like bad news after bad news, or it's some negative thing, or this like natural disaster happened, or this person was shot, or this. It's like, why is it always all this bad news? I'm like, oh, mom,
Yeah.
you do not realize how these media networks make money. And it's exactly to what you said. Like eyeballs, equals attention equals um, ad dollars. Like that's what it is. Like that's the name of the game. And there is an element of human psychology. So I guess when you take all that into account, like how do you break through that then? Like how do you, as someone who is trying to spread positive news and uplifting stories, like what are the tactics that you're using to overcome, I guess in a way, human psychology?
Well, they say in I could answer that in two ways. They say, one, um, do things that don't scale is what they say in like the startup culture. And that's something I've really done with the newsletter is like anyone who joins and responds, I respond to them and I make sure I acknowledge, thank you for subscribing. Like they a lot of them share their stories with me, a lot of my readers, and why my content resonates with them, or they're sharing it with a son or a daughter or a grandson, and the reason why. And you know and this is an example of a person that reached out to me specifically and said, hey, I saw one of your stories, and we got in touch, and it ended up turning into this piece of content. um but yeah, it's like about building those one-to-one relationships and like getting people to spread the word and asking them. It's not really, if it's a great story that they really enjoyed, like they'll naturally share it anyway. But like building that relationship with people, if people put a face to a name and know you better and you're not just a stranger from the internet, they're more likely to do favors for you and spread things around. So um yeah, that's like the basics of what I would say. And then number two would probably be like you mentioned earlier, like the hooks, starting with like the drama and the tension, and then kind of like telling the story and building it from there is kind of something that I found is a technique that works in terms of storytelling. Because it's kind of tapping into that psychology of, you know, you need the payoff to the story. If it starts in a bad way, you need to know how it resolved. So that's something I'm always working to improve.
Yeah. I pulled up this example as a story that I really liked. And funny enough, I actually had, and we were talking about this. I had, so this is Michael Flint for those unaware. He went back and played college football at 59 years old. And I you probably know better than I do. I forget, is he officially the oldest college or the oldest D1 player or no?
So if you go back, I believe there's a 61-year-old kicker, Alan Moore, I think his name was. Yeah, the stories of the oldest college football players, the one that you had there, but like right
This
above
one?
Mike Flint. Yeah. Now I'm not sure about division level and how that separates out, but yeah, there's a 61-year-old guy, that this guy here, Alan Moore, that kicked. I forget the school, but him, and then there was a 60-year-old below him there. Um, yeah, what school did he go to? I don't even
Tom
remember.
Thompson.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's like it's hard to find the info on these guys because a lot of it slips under the radar, especially when like the early internet days, like 2009. I wouldn't say early internet, but like stories didn't spread like they
Right.
do now. You didn't have a Bleacher Report posting about it, so um,
The
yeah,
Austin Kangaroos, a Division 3 team.
yeah.
I mean, so I feel like this may be kind of fun. I actually pulled up ESPN because I wanted to go through like some of the top and like I don't want this to turn into like a, Nick and Tyler just hitting on ESPN and like traditional sports media. That's not all what the kind of what we're trying to do here. But just trying to like call some attention to some of the headlines and kind of the stories that are being reported. So obviously now, since we're in the full swing of the NFL season coming up on the NBA, like it's going to be a lot of news related stories. Gabriel probably went to that trash FSU school, bro. FSU football is back. We're good again. UM is a fraud team, so you can take that to the bank. But so it's going to be a lot of news stories, but like I don't think ever like you would find an article like that on ESPN.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, oldest college kicker of all time, but it's a really cool perspective, um, and it's a cool news story. The one other you probably know about this. Um, the one other like sports news outlet that I like is the Players Tribune, which I think A-Rod started.
I think it was
And
Was
it
it Derek Jeter? I think it was Derek
was it
Jeter.
Derek Jeter? Am I messing
I
that up?
believe so, but I think he sold it. It's going through a couple different
Yeah, it might be
companies.
Derek Jeter. You're probably right. Um, but like these stories are really cool because it's usually an athlete talking about so like for example this one, Diego Luna.
Mhm.
Um So I'm having a panic attack. Um, so like they discuss like actual stories and life events, and it's a little more, I guess, deep, but I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, like firsthand accounts
Right.
in, I don't know. I've read the Players Tribune for years, and I just feel like their editors have gotten pretty heavy-handed with like changing the wording of the athletes.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like their storytelling has gotten a little diluted by whatever editorial boundaries they have in place and guidelines. Because I feel like I've read stories by players that I feel like I know how they speak and how they talk and how they would write,
And you're like, this
and
is
it's
not.
completely different. Yeah, like it's not their
Yeah.
voice. So I feel like that's what they've been trying to do is get the authentic voice of the athletes. But yeah, like you could even say like this was written by. Never mind, it's just a video. Um,
You know.
but yeah, I mean, like
See.
Jalen Brunson, I'm sure he's college educated. He's probably a good writer. And I'm sure
Yeah.
this is his voice. He's a well-spoken guy. Um, but there are some where I feel like the editors got super involved, and but yeah, it's an angle. It's a different angle, and it's something that is kind of what I'm trying to mold our brand after is telling these stories, in
Yeah.
an authentic way.
Do you, I mean, you have 26,000 newsletter subscribers. So there's obviously a market for it, and people want to read these stories and are interested. Um, when you think about like your kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not perspective, but I guess like the business case for Joker Mag. Are you trying to compete with some of these other media outlets, or are you just trying to carve out your piece of the pie over here completely separate on some other island, and like you're not even trying to compete with the ESPNs, with the Players Tribune? Like how, like kind of how do you view the strategy of Joker Mag?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring the people in that wanted more of those. I would watch Sports Center growing up, and they would have like a 2-minute story that's like a feel good underdog story. That would be, like I said, 60 to 90 seconds of their broadcast would be spent on that. And I always wanted more of that. And I feel like there are so many, there's probably millions out there that feel the same way as me. So I'm trying to take a very small part of like that very broad sports audience who are really passionate about these kind of stories and bring them into my world. And, you know, like I said, I think there's millions out there. We're only scratching the surface with 26,000. And, I everyone we hear from, it's like, how did I not discover you sooner? And that's like an
Mm.
emotion that's really expressed very often from new readers. So, it's just about, like we talked about, consistently putting in the work and doing what it takes.
Yeah, I'm just clicking through like a bunch of your stories. So for anyone interested, again, that's jokermag.com. Highly suggest you sign up for the newsletter so you get all these stories and more in your inbox. I'm a subscriber. I feel like I'm a very transparent type of person. Like I would not be advocating for something that I myself didn't enjoy. So highly suggest you subscribe and check it out. But just going through some of the stories, man. I mean, so like this one you posted a couple of weeks ago, how Darius Cooper became an unlucky cigarette for defending Super Bowl champs. Um, like I don't know, and it's probably because like a lot of our interests are aligned, but like for me, reading something like this is, I don't know, just refreshing, I guess, from what typical sports media shows you. Um,
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about Darius Cooper, we can.
do it, yeah.
He's an interesting guy. He was a high school quarterback, 0-star recruit, had 3 offers total, and the one was for a program that was transitioning from Division 2 to an FCS, Division 1 FCS school. And so it's called Tarleton State. It's a school most people nationally, even college, like big time college football fans, probably haven't heard of. And they saw he was athletic, and they brought him in and said, even if we can't put him at quarterback, we can figure out something. And so all the position groups were kind of fighting for him, and he ended up becoming a receiver. And like you see here, he only caught 6 passes in his first 2 seasons, so 16 college games. His third year, he had a breakout game against TCU. And this is the part that like I really loved about him. Like, and these are the kind of nuggets we look for with our brand, is like finding these little like tidbits that like tell you more about the person's character or their journey or a pivotal point. He was on the national stage, 6 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown against TCU. And everyone like was like, who is this guy, Darius Cooper? Like, why have we never heard of him? All these schools started reaching out. They said, 15 to 20 schools, big Division I programs wanted him. And, in the NIL age, like everyone's going and like transferring schools every year, it seems. And this guy was like, you know what? No, like I'm not leaving. I'm staying with the people that, brought me in and believed in me from the start. He showed loyalty to them. And I think that speaks a lot about his character and probably why he got interested in the NFL to begin with. 4.0 GPA, had great grades, wasn't invited to the Combine, Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine Bowl, anything. Really didn't have a chance to get in front of very many pro scouts. Did have a pro day, wasn't great. Somehow, the best GM in football, Howie Roseman, found him, and the rest is history. He ended up making the team as an undrafted free agent, and has really impressed since the preseason and training camp. There's quotes from AJ Brown in here, quotes from Devontae Smith, Heisman winner, that's like looking up on the sideline of practice. He's like, Darius Cooper highlights, like looking up his teammates' highlights because he's so impressed with him. And, it's a lot that this guy overcame, and he was still very much unknown even to his own teammates, and kind of broke through and put in the work to get there. And just kind of an example of a modern day underdog story that's kind of flying under the radar, like you said, in terms of like the national media. We had the Philadelphia Inquirer cover this guy. We had, I pulled in articles from his high school, his college days and stuff like that, and kind of put the story together from that. But that's kind of like what I'm trying to do, and like telling the complete story and finding the full picture. And yeah, here's this like big highlight from the preseason against Cincinnati. And this was against their first and second stringers. And pretty quickly after this, he changed his number to a new number. He had like a temporary number 41. I forget what he is now.
I was gonna say 41 is kind of a disgusting number for a wide receiver.
And that was so something we put in there, was like, it's a temporary number, and it just kind of was a reminder to him that like nothing is permanent in the NFL, and like you have to work for your job every day. But yeah, I mean, the NFL is full of stories like this, and that's what I'm here to find, and that's what we exist to do. And like I said, it's not something you'll see too much of in the national media.
One thing that I'm sure you and I share this perspective is, in talking to a lot of these athletes, like I'm always surprised just along their journey, like how many things had to go right for them to end up where they are. And it's funny because one of my favorite questions to ask athletes, or even entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is a very similar type field, similar in the sense that you do need a lot of things to go your way. One of the questions I always ask is like, if we were to simulate the world 1,000 times, in how many of those simulations do you end up exactly where you are today? And usually the response that I get is like, probably none. Like, if you think about all the things that has happened in your life up to this point, and all the breaks that you had to get, and a lot of the bad things too, and even potentially like things that did not break your way that could have led to something amazing. Like it's honestly, my head starts hurting when I think about it all, and kind of how the universe conspires to kind of build out your life. But it's interesting though, because I also think about like for as many stories like Cooper's, there's also the stories of guys who have maybe had a very similar journey, but then didn't pan out or didn't get the opportunity. Like, would you want to cover stories like that? I guess failures is probably a terrible way of framing it, but
no, I mean, that's the thing too. Like, I'm interested in any kind of story that shows these lessons, like I said, to the next generation. Like, I mean, you can consider if I grew up and wanted to be a pro baseball player, which obviously was my dream, was every baseball player's dream. I played through college. Like, did I fail? Like, you have to look at it through your own lens and kind of, what's that person doing today? Like that journey allowed me to start this, and this is what I feel like is my purpose and like my mission is like to
Yeah.
build this platform. And so, wherever your journey started and like the lessons you learned, like we can all learn from that. And I think, athletics is just one origin story almost, like your athletic career. It all happens and unfolds like mostly before we even become adults, if we're being honest. Like a lot of your journey already is kind of written at that point, to what you can become, and then like the outcomes are kind of condensed the older you get, and then there are these breakout stories. But yeah, to your question, like I think there's something to learn from everyone, and it's just we want to bring people in around the whole theme of the underdog, people that identify with this underdog mentality that we preach. And that's kind of what I want this to be, and eventually expand, like I said, outside of sports.
Do you see yourself getting into like entrepreneurs, or like what would be like
Yeah, I mean,
the next subject?
as a aspiring entrepreneur, I guess I would say it's become a passion of mine to talk about, business success and people that have succeeded
Yeah.
in different industries. And yeah, I would love to, talk about entrepreneurship and, all kinds of areas. And there are different like versions of the same story almost. You can apply some of these things to like a business perspective. You can apply it to acting or comedy, like we talked about. Like they're seeing it through like that universal lens of like the human experience is kind of what I'm trying to convey in these stories.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. This one caught my eye. The wild path that took Joe Klecko from driving a dump truck to leading the NFL in sacks.
Yeah, you'll have to bear with me. This was written by my amazing guest contributor, Steve Lee. And I edit and publish every one of these stories myself, but I'm trying to remember the details of this one. He was a truck driver in high school and then
Hmm.
didn't end up playing in college for some reason. I guess, yeah. He played semi-pro football, and that's kind of where he was discovered. And this is one of those things where if it breaks your way, and it did break his way, like the equipment manager for Temple, I believe, saw him and then talked to the head coach of Temple and said, "You got to go look at this guy." And I think within a quarter of semi-pro football, the Temple head coach, who was a legend, said, "This guy, like, we got to bring him in." And then ended up becoming a stud defensive lineman, played pretty much everywhere on the defensive line, I believe, and now is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I think might have been his last year of eligibility that he got in. And if you talk to like the old timers who were around in that era, they'll say he's one of the most underrated players, like defensive players of his era. Um, and he kind of played in the period before they really recorded sacks and like all the modern like pressures and all those stats that you see now. He was like, in a different era where he doesn't get all the credit that he deserves. And, he's a Hall of Famer now, so he did, but you don't see the sack numbers comparing to, you're not able to compare him to like Micah Parsons on paper because we don't have his complete record of like sacks and pressures and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, another story where a guy followed a unique path and made it happen and earned it, like he said in that quote.
Dude, it reminded me of this may be off topic, but I'm trying to what's his name? The guy on the Steelers, is it Cameron Hayward?
Yeah, Cam Hayward.
Did you see his quote about not being able to support his family and how he needs to make more money?
No, was that recent
Yeah, it was recent.
when he was fighting for his
Uh,
raise?
yeah, where is that? Twitter probably has it. Cam Hayward. I don't know what to look up, to be honest. He had a quote, and I think, actually, funny enough, I think ESPN picked it up. Yeah, he has not made enough money for his family and needs a new deal. This is a business. I cannot play this game forever. I want to be maximized outside of the field. By the way, I absolutely hate this account. This
Yeah.
Dov Kleiman, like I just hate.
You
But
see he's stealing the video from someone else there too.
I mean, he's stealing it. And also, like his captions, like it gets clickbait stuff. But I thought this like people have to like I have to remind myself of this all the time. And I've had NFL players on the podcast, and they all come on and laugh and joke and say, "Oh, the NFL stands for not for long." And um, like when I think of NFL athletes, I think like I'm a Niners fan, right? So like I almost said Debo Samuel. Wow. Yeah, I miss him. No, but like Kittle or like Purdy, Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, like pick any one of your long tenured Niner player, and like that's my image of an NFL player, and I'm like, oh great, like you make the league, and then you're just in the league for 10 years, you make all this money, and life is great. But what you don't realize is like those are the exceptions, like those are the outliers.
Yep.
Like the actual reality is like most players are in and out of the league in 3 years. And that's it. And so it's a crazy business. And like in talking to these athletes too, like it's pretty difficult for them to kind of navigate post, whatever sport you're in. We're taking NFL as an example, but navigating the post NFL years, because you've basically trained your entire life to be in the NFL and to play football. And now, at the age of whatever, maybe 22, 23, you're out of the league, or maybe later, like 25, 26, you're out of the league. And it's like, okay, like go try to find a job in corporate America or go try and do something else. And it's
Yep.
pretty hard. So, um,
Even
and
like
this is one thing. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, even like for a college athlete, like when I came out of college, me and a lot of my teammates had this conversation, like where like your identity kind of goes out the window. It's like you kind of start fresh, and that's what led me to starting a website. Was like it was a new outlet for me, and going to the
Yeah.
gym has become like it's kind of replaced the athletic side of things for me. And where am I going to find that competition? Where am I going to channel my competitive energy and like try to build something from the ground up, just like you do as an athlete? And I think it's important to find that. But yeah, back to the
Yeah.
Cam Hayward thing. I mean, you have to maximize the time you have. And I understand his point. I think people probably took it out of context and saying you
Yeah.
can't feed your family with millions of dollars, which I'm sure
Right.
everyone would disagree with, probably him as well, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, one thing that I've brought up on the podcast multiple times, and I definitely probably sound like a broken record. I was actually just talking about this with who did I just have on the podcast? Wow, my memory is quickly fading. Tabor Pepper. He was the 49ers long snapper for a long time.
He's been on my
From
list for a while. You got to put me in touch with him.
Dude, I will. Super cool guy. Really, really cool guy. But his story is pretty wild too. But we were talking, and obviously I had to ask him about the whole Jake Moody thing and kind of what happened there.
Mhm.
But then we just started chatting about NFL athletes and all this stuff. And one of my goals with the podcast is like I want to humanize athletes again,
Mhm.
and I think it's a distinct pushback against some of the effects that gambling has had on fans. And we alluded to this when we first started this live show, but gambling has made it to where if I have a parlay and I need Debo Samuel to, whatever, get 40 plus yards, and Debo Samuel does not get 40 plus yards, and I now lose money,
Mhm.
I am now more likely to go on Twitter or to go shoot Debo a DM and be like, hey, you suck. You're the worst. Be better. And I think what gambling has done is before, right? Like as a fan, really the main thing you had to, I guess, quote unquote, lose, like if your team lost or if a player underperformed, is bragging rights to your friends, or maybe you're disappointed for like, an hour or even a day after the game. But now there's money tied to it. And it's not just money, it's your own money. Like you are tying your
Yep.
own finances to the outcomes of these games. And so naturally, I think it's created this ecosystem of where fans are a lot more mad if players don't perform, if teams don't perform, if they don't win. I think there's just a lot more negativity. And for athletes, and let me preface it by just saying this. Let me state the obvious. Yes, they are paid millions of dollars. They are paid to perform. Like Tabor came on the podcast, he said the NFL is a what have you done for me recently league. So it's all based on your most recent performance. I get all that. Like they are privileged in the sense you get to play a game, you get paid millions. Got it. Cool. None of that replaces the fact that they at the end of the day are also humans with real emotions, with mental health, with life events that happen in their lives that may affect crazy take here, that may affect their performance on the field. Perfect example. Cesar Ruiz. I actually just watched him this past weekend because the Niners played the Saints. Offensive lineman for the Saints. I forget if it was his first NFL game, but before one of his first NFL games, his grandmother, I really hope I'm getting this right. I believe his grandmother passed away like week before his first NFL game.
Hmm.
Like that's a terrible life. Like that is a terrible event for anyone. And now imagine having to go out and play in front of millions of people and trying to focus on football. Like think
Yeah.
about how difficult it is for you to focus at work if a small thing doesn't go your way. Like sometimes if I wake up in the morning, I realized I don't have coffee at home, like I ran out of coffee, I'm like, oh great, my entire day sucks. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't take a lot. And so Drew Brees, like before the year that the Saints won the Super Bowl, I believe it was also his grandmother passed away, and he was super close to his grandmother. His trainer came on and talked to me about it on the podcast. Like these are major life events for these players. Travarius Ward, who was the Niners corner last year, his newborn daughter passed away. Like, and then he has to go out and try to perform on the field. And I distinctly remember, like, there was this period right after obviously his daughter passed away when, it wasn't still out that, the news hadn't come out yet that his daughter had passed away. Fans were like, on Twitter berating him and being like, oh, Mooney Ward sucks. Like, what is he doing? He can't cover. Meanwhile, the guy is trying to like deal with the loss of his baby daughter. Like,
Yeah.
so I think what we're trying to do, and I mean, I'll speak for you, like, there is much more to these athletes than just, hey, this guy or girl who puts up stats and who is responsible for your financial outcomes. Like
Yeah.
these are people with real emotions and real things that happen in their life. I'll get off my soapbox, but
I mean, this might be like mean to say, but like if you're putting your financial future in the hands of like random people that you've never met, I
yeah,
think you should reevaluate, probably read some financial books.
yeah,
Um, but that whole industry, yeah, it's cratering people's like respect for the game and the respect for athletes. Even athletes themselves are betting on games, and we're seeing more of that. Um, it's kind of why like I'm not 90, I'm like 99% closed off to like taking on a DraftKings sponsorship in the future just because
oh,
I
for
like
sure,
I'm morally opposed to like it's
yeah,
gotten out of hand, and I feel like some of us have to take a stance against it now, and I think the tide is starting to shift a little bit, but I think the cat's already out of the bag in that sense, and people love to gamble, and the money's being made, the tax dollars are coming in, so I don't see it changing anytime soon. I think that the government will react too slowly, and things will
yeah.
continue as they are. But yeah, people need to develop that respect, and that's why humanizing these athletes and showing their human experience is even more important than ever.
I don't know if I've said this, directly on the podcast, but I've definitely said it, off the pod. As long as I do this podcast, will never take a sponsorship from any gambling site. And it's nothing personal. Like, again, I get it. You have a business, you're trying to maximize your profits, whatever. Like, do your thing. But it's just, to your point, it just does not align with my values and what I think is right. And like I mentioned when we were first talking about Joker Mag, like I don't want to promote something that I myself do not enjoy or do not agree with. So I can sit here all day and be like, yeah, Joker Mag is great and it's fantastic, but if I truly don't believe that, then I'm doing my audience a disservice by
Yeah.
promoting it.
Yep.
um So I mean, same. It's the same thing for any gambling site, right? It's like, listen, I'm not going to say that I've never gambled on sports in my life. Like I obviously have. And you could say I'm a hypocrite or whatever, but I just don't want to promote that to my audience. And those are not the morals that I align with. So I get it. From time to time, have some fun, gamble on a game, like obviously responsibly, and don't gamble your house away. But in terms of promoting that and being like, hey, this is sponsored by DraftKings, like I just can't get behind that.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from a marketer that I used to follow, just came up randomly, and he said, he showed a screenshot of the notification from ESPN. It's like, do you want to take this bet on, Bucky Irving to go over 100 yards tonight? Here's why it's a great bet. And
Mm,
ESPN is funneling people to this article that's going to push them onto ESPN's sports book to make this
yep.
bet. So they're basically colluding with themselves to get their audience to make a specific bet. And his point was, we're going to look back on these kinds of ads in this moment in time as like the early days of cigarette ads of like,
Mm,
you know, Camels and stuff like that, like smoking, Marlboro cigarettes, and like all the ads with like the cool cowboy and stuff like that. Like all those things that are banned from TV now are probably going to be looked at, in the same sense as like sports betting today and how it's promoted.
Well, I can't imagine for like the younger generation, because like I mean, you and I grew up in a world without sports gambling and it not
Legal
being shoved
sports
in our
gambling.
faces. Right,
Yeah.
right. Legal sports gambling. There you go. And it not being shoved in our faces, 24/7. Now, like you go turn on any game. I mean, especially ESPN, like Monday Night Football or whatever, and it's like it's in every corner. It's like, hey, and what's crazy is they've started showing it mid game. They'll be like, oh, the line was plus 1.5. Now it's -3 or whatever. Like, go bet here. Or like, I just can't imagine like being a young sports fan and just like the effect and impact that has on those kids and growing up in the world where it's like, because listen, whether we want to admit it or not, like, especially as a kid, like you're very impress impressionable.
Yeah,
Is that the
impressionable,
word? Am I
yeah.
saying that? Um, like, and what you see on TV, you almost take as the truth, and as so I don't know. I mean, I guess it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially like I said, with the younger generation and um all this gambling. Again, I'm not trying to shit on the entire industry, like, and I certainly don't want to sound like a hypocrite, because again, like I've said, I've gambled on sports, like I have fun from time to time, um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you talk about the next generation, like that's why you and I are doing what we're doing and
yeah,
carving out our niche in sports media. Like we want to give back to that next generation and show them true role models and like people that you can, you know, look to as proof that you can go down a certain path or you can overcome a certain
yeah,
problem or obstacle in your life, um, whether it's something really small or something large of a family situation or whatever. Like there's so many relatable stories that we need to surface, and through like your podcast, through our stories at Joker Mag, like everything, like you can find like the positive. There's so much good out there in this world, and then
yeah,
just this little industry of sports that doesn't get talked about and doesn't get seen, and we need to shed a light on that and like get young people on the right path. And you can speak to like the whole social media as a whole and like its negative effects, but I think that's kind of a bigger conversation. But in terms of like just setting the right example and putting people down the right path, and you know a lot of people are being led astray these days by just a lot of the popular things that are out there, and I think it's something that I'm passionate about, is leading people down the right path.
yeah. I was trying to pull it up to your point. So David Tyree is coming on the podcast this Thursday. I'm recording with him.
Awesome. That's great.
Um, for those maybe unfamiliar, I think maybe all it takes is one picture, and I think you'll know exactly who this is. um,
Me and my brother
hold
used to
on,
do this in the snow with like a football. We would dive into the snow and try to do that catch.
love it.
That's great.
Um, Arguably, like probably one of the most famous, catches, Super Bowl catchers of all time. 2007 Giants Patriots, Patriots coming off an undefeated season. I actually completely forgot about this until I started doing research for this podcast. The Giants and Patriots played in week 17 of that
Yep.
year, and the Giants were supposed to rest all their players, but Tom Coughlin was like, hell no, like we want to,
Yeah.
break this undefeated season for the Patriots. So they played everyone and they lost by 3. I'm trying to see. Yeah, 38-35. Um, I mean, they obviously lost to the Patriots, but like, I want to ask David about this. Like when he comes on the pod, is like, how important was that game?
Yeah.
And especially since it was so close, like you guys must have felt pretty confident, going into the Super Bowl, be like, hey, we just played these guys like 4 weeks ago, whatever, and we only lost by 3. But like again, perfect example, like someone who I only know because of one catch in the Super Bowl, and that's all I've ever seen. I'm trying to find it here. He actually he had he was addicted to alcohol growing up. Um, it says it somewhere here. Substance abuse, but there's a specific part on this website that talks about alcohol abuse. But now it's gonna really bother me. Where is this? I don't know. I can't find it, but I read it somewhere on the site. And so like someone out there right now who's struggling with alcohol addiction or substance abuse, you read a story like this and you learn about David's journey and you're like, damn, this guy was addicted to alcohol. Again, I'll ask him about it on the pod, but I'm assuming not a good period of time in his life, and went on to have, again, probably the most, famous catch in the Super Bowl of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how inspiring is that? Like, how awesome is it to learn about that? And in no way am I trying to plug my podcast, right? But like, even if you want to just go read his story, like don't listen to the podcast, go just read about David and listen and go see. I'm sure he's done other podcasts. Like go listen to his journey. Same thing. I was just reminded. You're gonna laugh because it's another one of my sports books. But Rich Paul put out a biography called Lucky Me. And so Rich Paul, agent for LeBron James, longtime friend. But growing up, and he talks about in the book, like he grew up on the streets of Cleveland. Now I can't remember all the details, but obviously a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, just really bad circumstances. How awesome is it to read Rich's story and be like, wow, like I'm in a similar situation, and he was able to make it out. Again, did he get lucky by meeting LeBron? I think it was at the airport. Yes, he did. But also Rich put in a ton of work because he was selling, I think he was selling jerseys or something. I forget the exact story. I think he was selling jerseys, and then he was wearing like one of his jerseys. I can't remember who it was, but it caught LeBron's eye at the airport. He was like, "Oh, that's a cool jersey. Where'd you get that from?" And that's how the friendship sprouted. But if Rich hadn't been doing all that work when he was younger, right, and building up his jersey store or whatever, like, it's gonna bother me. Rich Paul jersey, LeBron. Yeah, so this is the full story. So after graduating high school, Rich Paul was selling jerseys in Cleveland out of the trunk of his car. In 2002, he saw LeBron James at the Akron Canton Airport. LeBron asked Paul to be part of the rest was history. I wonder what he talks about the specific.
The link was at the top. It's actually ESPN, which is a surprise. But it's about LeBron in a way. So
it's about LeBron. Yeah.
Is it a surprise? You could probably control F and do jersey. Let's see what it says.
Warren Moon, Houston Oilers throwback.
Wow. Powder blue.
So
that's awesome. Yeah, if it wasn't for that jersey.
Yeah, about to board a flight to Atlanta for the 2002 NCAA Final Four. James was dressed for the occasion on Michael Vick Falcons jersey that was sure to get love down south. There was just one problem. The jersey was a replica. Okay, yeah. Now this is not an authentic. Then came along the real thing, tiny and thin, but it was swag twice the size, and is authentic. Warren Moon, yeah. So again, is there some element of luck? Absolutely. Like, I agree. And I fully admit it. And if you were to talk to Rich, he would also admit it. The fact that he was at the airport at the same time as LeBron, just happened to be wearing his Warren Moon authentic Houston Oilers throwback jersey. Of course. But also, like, if Rich hadn't put in the work beforehand, he never would have had an opportunity to get lucky. Like, he never would have been in the position to be lucky. I had I feel like I'm just getting on my soapbox a lot here, but what's his name? The founder of the Enhanced Games. I think maybe I was talking to you about this or somebody else.
Yeah, you just interviewed him, right?
Yeah. Aaron D'Souza, yeah. Really, really impressive guy. Like, obviously very smart, very talented. Enhanced Games, in very simple terms, it is the Olympics, but on steroids. So steroid use is legal. It sounds bad from the outside, but if you actually talk to Aaron, I just encourage everyone to do your research and see what they're actually doing, because they are taking every precaution. They have a whole team of doctors. They have every possible metric on these athletes. His whole thesis is like, hey, we're basically enhanced in every other area of our life. So, like, why can we not just like push the limits of human, like the physical limits of humanity? And he also thinks in the whole freedom of choice, like, athletes should be able to choose what they do with their bodies. But he met Peter Thiel at Oxford, who Peter Thiel, famous entrepreneur, investor for Silicon Valley. And like, Peter happened to be giving, I think it was a lecture or something at Oxford, and Aaron ran into him, and that kind of kicked off his like business entrepreneurship journey. But he talks about it, and he says, he's like, oh, a lot of people will see that and be like, oh, you got lucky. Like, Peter happened to be at Oxford that day. You happened to run into him, whatever. And Aaron's like, I wasn't lucky at all. Like, I had to put in the work, first of all, to be able to get into Oxford. Then I had to join, this specific club that had these, GPA requirements and all this stuff. So, like, I was continuously putting in work and putting myself in a position to be lucky. What happened after that, sure, you can call it luck. I call it, work ethic, being, just being able to be in that position. So, like, I don't know. I don't remember what the original point of this whole thing was, but I do think there's something to be said about just working and putting in enough work to where you are putting yourself in a position to become lucky. Because if you don't, then you have no opportunity to be lucky.
Yeah, that's well said. And it's, going back to the Rich Paul story, if he wasn't out there grinding away, like selling jerseys out of the back of his car, he wouldn't have been in the right place at the right time. Like, he was already putting in the work to put himself in that position, like you said. And, you really can't get lucky without putting yourself in the position to get lucky, or putting yourself out there. You can't just like sit on the couch and watch Netflix for the rest of your life and expect like, oh, someone's going to knock on your door and hand you $10 million. If you don't put yourself in the position to meet the right person or to get the right opportunity, then you're never going to get it. So why not try?
And to just kind of finish off the Rich Paul point, like, it's not like Rich Paul met LeBron James and then they were just friends and that's it. Like, Rich Paul was just friends with LeBron. Like, he started Clutch, like one of the biggest sports agencies in the world. Actually, might be the biggest. So it's also like, one element of it is like doing the work so that you can get lucky. But then the other part of that is like, what do you do once you get lucky? Like, once you see that moment, like once you get to that point where you are lucky, do you capitalize on that, or do you just say like, oh, that was lucky, or like, what do you do after? So Rich Paul, like I said, could have just sat there and be like, okay, cool, like, I'm friends with LeBron, like, this is awesome. But he obviously had much bigger plans, and obviously, that ended up being Clutch. So,
Yeah, back when I had my podcast, that just reminded me of a quote from a guy that I interviewed. He was friends with all the big athletes at the time, like Odell Beckham Jr., Baker Mayfield, all those guys when they were with the Browns. He was like a VIP person in Vegas, and now I think he ran for office or something. But his quote was like, "Once you're successful, then that's when like the real work starts, and that's when you have to fight to like stay where you are or can continue to grow. Otherwise, like everyone's going to come after you and be gunning for you." And like that's when you have the eyes on you, which means you have to work even harder to stay where you are and to keep progressing and keep growing. And that just really resonated with me because we feel like, you look at Rich Paul, you look at LeBron James, you look at any person that you assume is successful, and you underestimate like the amount of work they still have to put in to maintain their position. And like you said in the NFL, like tying it back to that, guys' careers last 1 to 3 years on average. So it's like, yeah, we made it to the NFL, but how are we going to stay in the NFL? And it's a week to
Yep.
week league, and everything is basically day to day, week to week. Like things can change at the drop of a hat. So like, how have you built the work ethic to continue to work when you are deemed successful, by all accounts? Or what's motivating you internally to keep going?
That's a good point. I also think about like uh like are you motivated by external rewards or some sort of internal um force? And at least from my experience, I think if you can tap into some sort of internal motivation, I think your likelihood of success is a lot higher. I think you're probably giving yourself a better shot. And I think it kind of ties into what we were talking about at the beginning too, with like you need to separate like your expectations and external validation and all the metrics, like separate that from the thing that you're doing. And so like I think about like what motivates me, and it's not the views, right? Like although they are nice and I'm not a robot, right? Like validation is always a good thing to see, but I think if you can tap into something that motivates you internally, I think you'll be able to go I mean harder for a lot longer, to be honest.
This is going to come out of left field. Have you ever heard of the Wall Street Playboys?
No, I haven't. Wall
They
Street
go by
Playboys.
they go by Bowtied Bull now on Twitter. They were a big account in like 2018, 2019, and they've grown. They talk a lot about like crypto,
Okay.
and like business in general, but like one of
These
their
guys?
sayings, this is like a rip-off account.
Oh,
Go type
archive.
in Bowtied, like BO, like a bow tie. Bull. Yeah, that one right there. The top one. So their account, they have a Substack that I subscribe to, but it's just like business advice mainly, and they're supposedly an anonymous group of people that have started several e-commerce businesses. They're multimillionaires and whatever, but they always say you can't get extreme results without being an extreme person and
Mm,
doing extreme things. And sometimes when I talk to people and like I tell them, I'm really excited. Like I talk about like what my vision is for this media brand that I'm building, and they sometimes like you could tell right away like people just like aren't bought in or aren't as excited about it. And obviously I don't expect anyone to be as excited about it as I am, but I feel like I used to see that as a negative, but now I kind of see it as a positive because it means like I'm trying to do something extreme. I'm trying to get extreme results, and you need to do something that's different from the rest of people out there if you want to build something that's different and you want to make something that's bigger than yourself. So I think you need to have that vision and like that intrinsic motivation to do something. I wouldn't have stuck with this as long as I have if I didn't believe with my heart that this needs to be in the world, and like this needs to grow and be seen by more people, and like we talked about, passed down to the next generation. I'm sure you feel the same way with your podcast. Like you wouldn't be putting in all this work if you didn't feel passionate and internally like know that like there's a need for this, or
yeah.
even just to serve yourself, like to scratch that itch. Like there has to be something inside you that says like I need to do this every day, or I need to put in the work every week to make this happen. um but yeah, like I think people that are successful over a long time period, you look at Tom Brady, like people were ripping on him when he first came, you know, well, we all know his NFL story, but like when he got out of the league and it's like, what's Tom Brady going to do next? Becomes a broadcaster, becomes the highest paid broadcaster. Last year, everyone says he doesn't deserve it. Like he's a crappy broadcaster. What do you think that did to Tom Brady? Like that lit a fire under him, like that gave him his next thing to prove people wrong, and like now he's improving, and like 10 years from now he's going to be even better than he was, today. And what's motivating you and driving you internally to be better? And like Tom Brady's a great example. There's so many other examples of people with longevity and success over a long period of time, and I think you can kind of reverse engineer that for yourself and see like what's driving them and what can I do in my life to kind of replicate that in my own way or for my own thing.
I mean, couldn't have said it better myself, man. It goes without saying that I definitely agree. Yeah, it's just tough because I think I want to get to this tweet because I think this tweet's super good. But just sticking on that point a little bit more. Naval, do you know who Naval Ravikant is?
Yep.
So I had Eric Jorgensen on the podcast. Honestly, one of my favorite interviews that I've done. Eric put together the Almanac of Naval. Yeah. And it's basically a book that's dedicated to Naval's best quotes, best ideas, best stories. If you're unfamiliar with Naval, go look up Naval Chris Williamson or Naval Modern Wisdom. Start there, watch his latest interview with Chris. Then, actually, I'm going to take that back. Type in Naval Joe Rogan. Go watch the interview that he did with Joe Rogan. I think it must have been like 5 or 6 years ago now. Go watch that interview and then go watch the one that he most recently did with Chris on Modern Wisdom. The guy, I mean, so much incredible advice. I'm not going to try and unpack any of it on this live stream, but one of the things that he says that has stuck with me is, and paraphrasing here, that essentially people are not intentional enough with their lives. So when you look at it, and I'm probably going to butcher it, I think he said that there's 3 main decisions that everyone makes: where you live, what you do for work, and who you marry. If you can get those 3 decisions right, like that is like 95% of your happiness. But he says the problem is that a lot of people aren't intentional enough about those decisions. So like picking on the where you live one, because that one's super easy. Maybe you live in the same city that you grew up in. Maybe you live in the same city that your parents live in. Maybe, and you never consider moving to a different city, or you never consider like, why am I still in this city? Like, what is about this area that I actually like? Like, would I enjoy a different type of city? So it's like, people don't sit and actually consider other options and actually act with intention on the things that they think would bring them happiness, which brings me to my second point, which is I don't think enough people understand who they are and what drives them. And this ties back with the whole Tom Brady thing. I think Tom has a pretty good understanding. I mean, I won't speak with him. I'd love to have him on the podcast to ask him this. I think he has a pretty good understanding of what drives him. And maybe it's a childhood thing. Maybe it's like, I've had athletes on who have said like, I just want to please my dad. And that has been like almost like childhood trauma for them. And so like their entire lives, they're just like, I just need to please my dad the best I can. Tom has a good idea of what drives him. And maybe it's outside hate. Maybe it's people talking about him. I think a lot of people don't know that about themselves and don't understand like what truly drives you. And I've always said, in the short term, if money is your driving force, and if that gets you out, gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you to actually go pursue your dreams and go do things, great. Like lean into that. I think a lot of people have this like taboo idea of money. It's like, oh, it's bad to do things just because of money. I have the complete opposite take. I'm like, listen, if money is your motivation, like if that's why you're doing something, great. Whatever it is that motivates you, lean into it and go do it and let that be your motivation. Derek Sivers, just on the podcast, I'm gonna send you a link to his book, Useful and Not True. I've recommended this book so many times to so many people. The entire premise of the book is what are what are things that are useful but are not true? Really stupid example. A porcupine, right? If you think that a porcupine can shoot its needles at you like almost like a gun, that's probably going to get you to stay away from the porcupine. That is obviously not true. They cannot, they don't just fly out. Like it's not a gun, right? But it's useful because it gets you to stay away from the porcupine. If you think that sharks can fly or can whatever swim 100 miles an hour, again, not true, but useful because it gets you to stay away from sharks and to probably not swim in waters that are infested with sharks.
Mm-hmm.
He then ties that to like thoughts, and that's how it ties into my thing about money is like we all have these thoughts that are useful to us, but they're not necessarily true. So whatever it is that motivates you, it could be that it's not necessarily true. Like it could be like maybe you think that you're motivated by money, but that's actually in fact not true, but it's useful to you because you think it's true. I don't know, it's kind of a brain teaser, but like it, for simplicity's sake, whatever gets you to go do the thing, because at the end of the day, all life is going and doing the thing. Like that's all it is.
Yep.
Like people want to create these like complicated things so that they can sell a course and offer you this and that. All life is going and doing the thing. Guess what? If you want to lose weight, go walk 5 miles a day and eat less. Do that. I guarantee you will lose weight. If you want to build an online presence, post something once a day on social media. And after a year, I guarantee you will see some sort of result. Go do the thing. So very complicated way of basically just saying, go do the thing and lean into whatever motivates you.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And like your buddy just said, life is simple. We just make it complicated.
It really is. Like it,
very true.
And the other thing too is like what motivates you and what motivates me is could be very different.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have very different motivations. Like yes, there are some overlapping ones, like we talked about, right? What I'm trying to do with the podcast, what you're trying to do with the newsletter, right? We want to inspire people. We want to hopefully share stories that inspire change, that bring about a positive mindset and all these things. But maybe I'm more motivated by money than you are, or maybe you're more motivated by money than I am, or maybe some girl broke up with you 3 years ago and you want to prove her wrong. And so now you're super motivated to go out and build this huge business to show her like what she's missing out on. Right. Like, who knows? I just think you have to lean into whatever that thing is. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, people like will sometimes criticize like I think like the underdog, like chip on your shoulder kind of viewpoint. And like, you know, I think of Jalen Hurts, like people will talk about him and he'll refute it publicly. He'll say like, no, it doesn't bother me when people, talk negatively about me or underestimate me and all that kind of stuff. But you see the guys that like have that mentality and like it does put a fire under them. And I remember a story I think my dad told me about Nick Saban. I forget who the player was. It was one of his famous Alabama running backs, one of the guys that went to the NFL. And the whole thing was like, if you criticize his weight, like this guy will work harder. I think it might have been Eddie Lacy. Like if you get on him about his weight, like that's what motivates him and will get him in shape and get him to play better. And, to your point, whatever that thing is for you, like lean into it if it's working for you in a positive way. There's obviously drawbacks to everything and different kinds of motivation are better than others, but
right.
Yeah, if it gets you to the destination you're trying to reach, I say, in general, lean into it.
Right. And with the right, the thing of, if you're harming others or something like, don't,
yeah.
But that goes without saying. My friend Matt is like, Nicole, are you opening up to us? Yeah, man, this is my therapy session for the week. So
I took that comment way differently. I thought he meant like, are you opening the floor to us? I didn't realize that he was. That's funny.
I know his sense of humor, and I
Yeah,
guarantee you he was trying to
that's
to be
funny.
funny.
That's really funny.
Um, yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, going back to her point, I think people and that's a really good story about Eddie Lacy and
I'm not sure if that's true. I believe that's what the story was.
yeah,
I might be getting it completely wrong.
yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, like Matt said in the chat, and like we said, I think life is simple. We just make it complicated. And I also think there's an element of like I don't know if it's human nature. It probably is human nature. I need to do more research into this, but um the simple answer almost doesn't seem like it would work. Or because an answer is complicated, we think that it's somehow better or it somehow increases the likelihood that we'll be successful. So if I sat here and I told you, Tyler, you want to lose 20 pounds? Cool. How about you eat less and you just walk 5 miles a day? You'd be like,
Yeah.
okay. Versus if I sat here and I said, Tyler, what we need to do is get you to eat exactly 17 and a half grams of carbs a day. You need to eat 200 grams of protein. And then you also need to do 10 minutes of this, blah, 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 all of this stuff. And I package that all into a course that I sell you for $49.99. And you're like, great. Like, this works. like this is going to get me to the promised land. I know we were talking about it. Hermosi to me is, I mean, I think we're witnessing it. I mean, not I think we are witnessing it in real time, but he's going to go down, in my opinion, as one of the best marketers and just entrepreneurs of our generation. I mean, obviously very different when you compare it to someone like Elon Musk, like different scale, different businesses, different models, but maybe, the more fair comparison is just best marketer. But if you read any of his books or if you look at his advice, like it's all relatively simple advice. Like he's not telling you to go out here and redesign the entire internet. It's like, great, you want to start a business, like go see if people are interested in the thing that you're trying to sell. And if they are, like run ads or try to get attention in some manner to draw more eyeballs to your thing. And if your product is good, like you're going to sell more. Like that's what it comes down to. And I love Hermosi too, because his tweets, I mean, we could probably do a whole live stream just reading his tweets. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have his book somewhere around here. I was honestly a skeptic of his for a while, and
Yeah.
I'm not like a huge fan, like super fan of his, but I like the content he puts out. I've enjoyed his newest book, and I've already, I'm only like a quarter of the way through the book because I'm like trying to implement some of these ideas in my own business and kind of doing it that way. Like, a lot of self-help books and stuff that you'll read it all and it makes you feel good in the moment and then you never apply it or you don't even remember what you read. So I'm trying to, do something differently when I read those kind of books now and, go through it methodically and try to actually apply some of the lessons.
Yeah, this I saw this tweet the other day and I retweeted it. The greatest risk to your business isn't the economy or competition, it's you not wanting to do it anymore. And I think this ties in beautifully with like our conversation on motivation. It's like, okay, if the number one risk to my business is me not wanting to do it anymore, then probably a good idea to try and figure out like what motivates me to go and do the thing, because that will then solve my biggest risk. So
Yeah, and doing this, growing my little sports media brand since late 2017, I've met a lot of people that have said, "Oh, I'm starting my own thing," and um, I mean, there are so many guys that I've talked to that you'll reach out 3 months later after you had that conversation and they're so passionate about it, and then 3 months later it's like, yeah, it's decided to go in a different direction or try something new, or I didn't have enough time for that or whatever. Like you need something that's going to keep you going. So instead of like I used to give tactical advice, and not that I'm like an expert in anything, I'm always learning, but I tried to share what worked for me in certain ways and like get tactical. But now if I were to talk to someone and give them advice, the first thing I would say is make sure you're pursuing this for like the right reason, like something you're passionate about. Um, and obviously you want to figure out the business case and all that kind of thing, but honestly, that can kind of come later. You have to be in the like
Yeah.
playing on the right field to be able to make it work and do it for a long enough period of time. And if you're not doing something that fuels that fire in you, then eventually you are going to give up. To his point there, you are the biggest risk to your business if it's you know you continuing or you giving up. Like it doesn't matter what the outside factors are if you refuse to put in the work and keep going.
Yeah, man. I mean, couldn't agree more. It's funny. Like I'll have some people come up to me and be like, what's your advice for like content or podcasting or, um, I know we talk about like thumbnails and stuff all the time, especially on YouTube. And I always steal this I stole it from Mr. Beast. But he always used to tell people like, do 100 episodes and then come back and see if you have the same question. And if you have the same question, then great, I'll help you. But first, go and do 100 episodes of whatever you're thinking about doing, or 100 newsletter articles, or 100 whatever. Um, and if you still have the same question, I will answer it for you. But I guarantee you, with a 99% success rate, that you will figure out the answers to your own questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the 1% better every day. And the same goes for content or anything else that you do. It's like if you're putting out content, just do one thing better for every single video that you put out. Change one thing and make it better. Maybe it's your intro, maybe it's your thumbnail, maybe it's your hook, maybe it's your title. Pick one thing, spend some time, make it better. And by the 100th episode, you'll be ideally 100 times better than you were when you started. It's funny, like for me with podcasting, it's like I remember when I was starting out, it's like, okay, like I say too often sometimes, and sometimes I go off on these tangents, which I clearly still do. And like it could be really overwhelming, like when you first start out, because it's like all these different things that you're noticing that could be better. But if you try and focus on all the different things at once, like you're just going to end up focusing on nothing and not actually getting better in any one area. So for me, it was like, okay, this podcast episode, like the very first one, I'm going to be super nervous. Let's just focus on getting through it. And hopefully by the end of the episode, I'm not as nervous. Like that is my sole focus. And then episode number 2, it was like, okay, I've noticed that sometimes I take too long to introduce a question. Like, let's try to shorten that and make it a little bit tighter. And then you just keep going and going. I'm sure you've seen the same thing with writing or with your newsletter. It's like, okay, let's work on better titles. All right, let's work on getting the best stories. So I think if you just focus on one thing and then kind of just keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we're looking at like this is my biggest downfall. Like, I get on Twitter every day, and I'm reading different people's perspectives, and yeah, this is an awesome tweet. I read this earlier. It's great. Makes a great point. But at a certain point, you are kind of like delaying putting in the work, and that's something I'm in my own mind. I'm notorious for like just like delaying doing the work, and I used to do it, even after school, like with homework. My mom would always say like, "You're the master at like wasting time,"
Mm,
and like not being good at time management. I've gotten better, but in some ways, it's like there's just a new distraction to find and stumble down. And we think we need to read all these books and all this advice. And like I
yeah,
saw a tweet today, ironically, a tweet that said, if I just keep scrolling for one more minute, then I'll know the answer. Then I'll find the answer. And
yeah,
it's like, man, like, I don't know. It's so easy to get distracted. And that's part of the reason that people give up, because they get distracted and they want to pursue
yeah,
something new. In the beginning, I would be changing business models every month. I would say like this was my first business I started. But since then, I had started so many other things to try to fund this passion of a business. And I was
yeah.
like, I can make money faster here. Like, let me try drop shipping. Let me try this and that. And I've
Mm,
talked about this on podcasts before, but it's so hard not to get distracted and not to say like, oh, this person has the answer for me. Like this person is going to unlock the secret thing that I've been ignoring, or this is that one thing I need to do. But when in reality, like the reality is like, it's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to
yeah.
be like perfect, but you have to do like the unsexy work and keep it as simple as you can, because, um, you know, I'm doing as much as I possibly can, but this is still a side project at the end of the day, and it's something I want to turn into a full-time living. And the only way to get there is to keep going and keep finding what works and keep putting in the work. But um, I'm my own worst enemy sometimes because I will get distracted and I will try new things, and it distracts from the main thing that's going to keep us growing. So um, that's just something to be aware of on that path.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And to add to that, so Derek Sivers, who I said I just had on the podcast, he had this really great analogy. So when you go to ChatGPT, sorry, my mom texted me. When you go to ChatGPT and you click on like the deep research feature, you put in some inputs like, hey, I want to learn more about Joker Mag. Give me this, and that, and then you press enter, and the ChatGPT goes off and starts doing this thing. Now, imagine if when ChatGPT started working on an output for you, you stopped it and you said, "Oh, actually, what I need you to do is this other specific thing." Okay, cool. And then you go run the program again, and then ChatGPT's whatever thinking, and it takes 8 minutes. And then you interrupt it again. It's like, "Oh, no. Actually, what I need you to do is this other thing." And if you continuously do that, guess what? You're not going to get an output. You're always going to be rerunning and restarting the program. So
That's
he
a really good
said,
point.
like, in your own life, you probably have all the inputs that you need. Like, you have all the information that you need. So stop restarting your own program. Take the inputs that you have, take the knowledge that you have, whatever you want to start doing, podcast, newsletter, whatever, X business, Y business, Z business, go and try it with the inputs that you have, get an output, and then go back and rerun the program with different inputs based on the output that you just got. Right? So like another very simple example, I post a video on YouTube. Like my inputs are all the current knowledge that I have. So a title that I think would work, a thumbnail that I think would work, whatever, a guest that I think would connect with my audience. Those are my going in assumptions. Those are my going in inputs. I then post the video, I let the program run, and then I come back and I see how did the video do? And that is now my output. And based on that output, I may have different inputs for next time. Maybe the title wasn't great. Maybe the thumbnail wasn't great. Maybe I need to change this. Maybe the guest actually wasn't that awesome. Maybe I suck. Whatever it is, you now have different inputs, but you have to run the program. You have to get some sort of output. You can't just keep refreshing the program. And I think it speaks to the people who always refresh and who always try new things and who always keep restarting the program. So the takeaway from this is run the damn program.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think I kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest with you. It's I totally forgot what I was gonna say. Wow, that never happens.
Oh, there's a first for everything. While you think about that, I will say, so this tweet that I pulled up, we don't have to read the whole thing, but basically talks about the importance of obsession. And I like this part at the end because the choice is binary: be obsessed or be average, and being average is worse than death.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I read, speaking of sports books, I don't know if you read this one. I read one about Lenny Dykstra, his autobiography, famous
haven't.
Phillies and Mets outfielder. He said the worst thing in life is being average. That was his biggest fear. He never wanted to be average. And it led to some really high highs and really low lows. And that would be an interesting one for you to read. I don't know if it's necessarily an underdog story. I guess it could be framed in that way, but he was someone that was scared of being average. And it kind of came back to me what I was going to say about this whole inputs thing. Every person and every business is unique. And what I've found is like the more information generally of like marketing and business that I consume, like, I don't know why it's always felt like for some reason in my perspective, like when it comes to my business, when it comes to like Joker Mag as a business, I have like blinders in certain ways, like where it's hard for me to come up with certain ideas. Like if I read Harmosi's book and he says about this way to structure a certain offer, it's so hard for me to like think about that in the context of my own business and like how do I frame that? Like, do I frame that for sponsors or for my readers, or like, is there another way to think about this? But like when I think about someone else's business, for some reason it comes more easily to me because I'm outside of that bubble of like being like an optimist and having so much hope and like big dreams for this business. It's like it's easier when you're on the outside. So I think when you're reading about things and like when you have that information overload that's so easy these days to come across, like endlessly scrolling Twitter, then jumping over to Instagram, endlessly scrolling there and watching, hours and hours of 10-minute YouTube videos, like just one more 10-minute video. And it's like, it's so easy to just get caught up in that loop and like question yourself. I think that's what it is. Like you start to question yourself and question your approach. And that's why it's so important to sometimes like just step back and say like, okay, what is the one thing? That's another book, is The One Thing, but I'm not advocating for reading books, but I mean, besides my book that I have here, but
Underdog mentality. There you go.
no, the one, like, focus on the one thing you need to do. And like you said, for the example of YouTube, like nothing's going to tell you the secret to like growing to 1 million subscribers overnight. Like it's not going to happen unless you post that next video or publish that next thing and make that thumbnail 1% better. And it's all contextual to you. So like you're building specialized knowledge of what works for you and your business and your context. Might not work for anyone else, but it's going to work for you. And that you're the most important person, so you need to do what's best in your case. And the best way to learn is just doing it. And this is what I've always said, like, to people, like, I learned about SEO through the context of like jokermag.com. Became like now I'm in the career of SEO, and I only learned it by doing it. And I still talk to people that are like further along in their career than I am, and they still have never started their own website, which kind of like boggles my mind. Of like, you need to actually do the work to learn the work, and it's something you really can't learn without doing it. And I can't put it into words because you need to experience it yourself to know and to understand it.
This is a perfect way to end this live stream. And I first heard Hermosi talk about this. I don't know if this is actually Hermosi's thing or who came up with this. I'd really love to know kind of the origin of it, because I want to give that person credit. Because I think, in classic social media clickbait content, if there's one graph that everybody needs to see, if there's one thing that everybody needs to know, I think it's this graph. And before we go through it, to kind of speak to what you were saying, which, by the way, spot on. I think a big issue today with social media as well is you only see everyone's best side. And now that could be very simply like, everyone seems super happy on Instagram, right? Like that's like the going in thing. It's like you see everyone's best life. Like rarely do people post kind of the lows of their life. It's always the highest of highs. But I think the same could be said for anything in the business world, because there's so many people trying to sell you a course or trying to sell you something. So obviously they're going to show you like, hey, I'm a crypto guy and I made $10,000 last month trading whatever. And you see that and you're like, oh, let me set the stage real quick, because I think this is super important. You're building your newsletter. You have 26,000 subscribers. We don't have to get into like your revenue or actual numbers. I'm going to just throw out a random number. Let's say you're making $5,000 a month in revenue off your newsletter. And now you see a TikTok. You're in bed, you're scrolling on TikTok, and some crypto guy comes up and he's like, hey, I just made 10K last month or 20K last month trading Doge, whatever. Here, if you want the exact formula, follow me. Here's my course. In your mind, you are comparing what you currently have with what you could potentially have. What you currently have is, and 5,000 actually is probably even too high. Let's say it's $1,000 a month. What you currently have is this thing that's making $1,000 a month. What you could have is this thing that could make $20,000 a month. Now imagine all the things you could do with $20,000 a month. You could buy a boat. You could buy the house that you always wanted. Like you could sit in the front row at Eagles games and watch them lose. You could do all these things.
Watch them lose to the Niners.
Exactly. So your mind is calculating that in real time. And what a lot of people fall into is the trap of, oh, let me go do that thing. And that's where the whole shiny object thing comes into play, because you have this shiny new thing that's promising you all these riches over here. And so what that leads me to is this graph. And again, like I said, I first saw Hermosi talk about it. I really want to know who came up with this so I can give them credit. So actually here it says, I saw this curve in the presentation by the awesome entrepreneur, Alex Hermosi. So maybe it is Hermosi's. This is basically the stages that everyone goes through when building a business. You start at the beginning. You have uninformed optimism. You see a crypto guy, he made 20K. You're super optimistic because truthfully, you really don't know anything about the crypto space. But if this guy made 20K, like damn it, like I can make 20K as well. So you have all this uninformed optimism. You don't know what you don't know. I'm gonna make a podcast. I'm gonna be Joe Rogan in a month. What you don't know is all the effort, all the editing, all the guest booking, like all the other stuff that happens in the background. You then go around, you go on your journey, you go down the curve, and now pessimism hits. Now you're like, oh shit. Like I actually have to cold email people. Like I don't have a cold email template. Like I have to edit my YouTube videos. I've never edited a video before. I have to create these thumbnails, but I don't know like what type of thumbnails people usually click on. These titles, like I really don't know the type of titles that work. So now you hit pessimism, and then that takes you down the path, and you eventually hit the dip. And this is where everyone quits. Is once you hit the dip. Once you realize that, oh, in order to grow a newsletter, I need to post consistently. Like I need to post every single week. Like that's what it takes. Like, yeah, like you need to be consistent. Like, oh shit, that's hard. Oh, I need to do all these research. I need to spend, hours on end every week researching these underdog sports stories and then coming up with a unique angle and coming up with the title. Like, nah, man, this isn't for me. And this is where you go to the crypto bro. And this is where you go to the new shiny object. And this is where everyone quits. But if you stick around and you stick with it, you then start going up again and you hit informed optimism, because now you actually know the things that you need to work on. Like, the things that you need to improve on. It's like what we were talking about, inputs and outputs. Great. This YouTube video didn't work. Why? My title probably sucked. My thumbnail wasn't as good. I can make improvements. Great. Now you start iterating. This is where you become, like a mad scientist. You're like, all right, cool. Like if I do this, if I do that, like maybe I'll get. So now you have informed optimism. Now you're feeling good about yourself again. It's like, okay, I can do this. You start reading more stories like yours in Joker Mag. And you're like, okay, like other people have been through worse. Like they made it out. Like I can find success too. And then you reach the achievement, which is whatever that is, either a financial outcome or some sort of subscriber count, whatever you define as an achievement. Once I saw that, and once I saw Hermosi explain it, I was like, this is it. You just have to make it through that dip and make it through the pessimism.
Yeah. And I was just thinking to myself while you were talking about that, the informed optimism line, I've bounced like from the highest of that to the lowest of that, like not the achievement area, because I just like there's always a new goalpost, but I would say like from the dip to like where that arrow is like how I've like you bounce around like day to day, week to week, and it's just about staying the course. And it really is so true. Like it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect, like similar kind of chart. But yeah, the more you learn about like building a media business or any kind of business, the easier it is to get pessimistic about it because it is so difficult. But the thing to remember that is that it is so rewarding as well. And there's a reason that you're doing it to begin with. And keeping that reason top of mind and reminding yourself every day of why you're doing it, even in the low points, is really important. And that's what's going to keep you going.
I honestly, like, after we're done with this live stream, I might just record a video and just like post it on Twitter or something and just like show this graph and be like, and I think you brought up a really good point, which is it's not linear, right? Like it's not like, well, clearly not linear, but like it's not in just one direction.
You're not
right?
going to
Like
follow that path consistently the whole way through.
Like you
Maybe
may
some
get to informed
backtracking.
optimism. Exactly. Like you might get to informed optimism, and then you might get to pessimism, and then you might get to the dip. Because to your point, like there's been so many times where I'm like, oh, I finally figured it out. And then it's like,
You get smacked in the face again. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. Tyler, this has been awesome, man. This has been super fun. First live stream. So congrats on being the first guest on the live stream. I definitely want to do more of these. I think these are super fun.
Me too.
Especially if, once we get more engagement from the chat and start answering more questions and stuff like that. I think it could
Yeah, and
be
a shout out to Matt and Gabriel for all
Yeah.
the chats and for sticking by us, and really appreciate your support.
Yeah, no, 100%. They're good dudes. They're good friends. So means a lot. Before we end the live stream, Tyler, where can people find you and more of your work?
Everything's at jokermag.com. Go to the homepage there, subscribe to the newsletter, put your email in there if you haven't yet. News story drops every Sunday morning, and you can pick up my book, The Underdog Mentality. It's all there on the website.
Love it. Tyler, thanks a ton, man. This was super fun.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.